Well, hello, I'm Lynn Christian from Soul Salt, and I have a special guest with me today, Sarah Boman. Before we get to her, I want to set up the topic, and then I will introduce you to this dynamic young woman. As an MCC, Master Certified Coach from the I.C.F, I have often been asked, hey, Lynn, I want to go into coaching. Where do I get started? This is one of the most common questions I get as someone who is coaching, who has coached since 1998. I have a lot of people coming to me and say, how did you do it? What would you suggest today? And I'll just quickly tell you, I received my first coach training from Coach U way back in, like I said, I've been coaching since 1998. So back in 1998, started to train with them. I've worked with Marshall Goldsmith and been certified with him in his key stakeholder work. I've flown to Australia and worked with Marvin and Grant Suzalu, Marvin Oka and Grant Suzalu in multiple brain integration techniques. I've been certified by Judith E. Glaser in conversational intelligence. I have other certifications, one in particular with Franklin Covey. For a time, I was director of innovation for Franklin Covey Coaching. I created coach training school for them. I've owned coach training schools, my own Soul Salt Academy, and then I partnered up with a couple out of Dallas, and we created Ultimate Coach University, and then I pulled out of that at some point to specialize just in my coaching. So I understand this world of educating people to become a coach. I've been a coach trainer. I've been trained as a coach. But this season of my life, I really specialize in my own work, and I don't do coach training. So I ran into Sarah. Sarah is in my community here in Salt Lake. She was one of these people who is diligent, she's actually a management consultant with the Boman Group. And she is going to tell you more about her company. What I found so fascinating about her is she is willing to do the deep work, the analysis. She's set up an Excel spreadsheet, and she's here to cover 4 topics with us. First of all, she's going to tell us a little bit about herself. And then the 4 topics we're going to cover are: what was the process for selecting the coach program that you want to go to? You haven't enrolled yet, but you've identified where you want to go. The things she looked for, the things that were red flags, and then a question about what about online? If you're one of those people who, like me, I was a single parent of 3 children, and so I wasn't able to take off and go to school. I needed to do the online version, so Sarah's going to address that. We're also going to talk a bit. We're coming to you from Salt Lake City, Utah. Utah is one of those states, as many, that have had a lot of fraudulent activity around coach training, where people are asking you to pay them huge amounts of money, and you don't necessarily get the bang for the buck or a bargain. You actually get a dud. And so that's something to watch out for. So Sarah's prepared to talk about that as well today. So Sarah, quickly take a minute, maybe warm up to the audience, let them know who you are, and then let's go into these 4 areas that we've prepared to deliver good information to our audience.
Thanks, Lynn. As you mentioned, I am a management consultant with the Boman Group. It's a company I set up here in Utah. I focus on chief of staff services, and I also do compliance. I have some experience working with the federal government, so I've got lots of experience dealing with red tape and winding my way through it. As you mentioned, I am also an aspiring coach. I want to specialize in executive training, executive presence, somatic feedback, and so I'm just starting to work with clients now, and will hopefully be attending the training that I identified early next spring.
Yeah, and that's something I want to just pause for a minute. One of the best ways to find out if you want to be a coach is to get a little bit of training. You don't have to have your certification yet, and try maybe some people that you know or some people in your immediate network and try it out. Because when we talk about your coaching clients, you light up, and we can tell that you're not making a decision and aiming at a target just because you thought it would be cool or sexy, or because you think you want to do it. You're literally vetting that you are a good match for the industry.
Yeah, one of the red flags that we'll probably get to a little bit later was, I think, in looking for coaching programs, I pretty quickly was able to eliminate programs that focused on money or prestige, things that weren't really at the heart of it, motivating working with clients and focusing on helping people achieve their own goals that they set for themselves. So it's a pretty big indicator, I think, of whether a program is legitimate or not, whether or not they actually genuinely want to do it for the love of helping people, or whether they're more interested in the money factor. That's a pretty huge red flag for me. So
yeah, and that is a red flag for, I think, almost any industry. If you're getting into it for the money, you may not have the staying power, you may not have the efficacy needed to be good at that particular job, whatever it is. So what was the process you went through for selecting the coaching program that you've selected?
well, first off, I started working with you as my own coach to sort of figure out and explore a little bit to see if that was really what I wanted to do and if it was a path I wanted to pursue for myself. At your recommendation, we started with the International Coaching Federation. So I went to their website and did a bunch of research. They have a great search tool where you can identify coaching specializations, whether the program is online only or in person only or a combination of both. So I used that as my departure point and where I started to kind of start to eliminate things and figure out what direction I wanted to take. And from there, I just set up a big old Excel spreadsheet and started doing a pros and cons list. I tend to be quite analytical, and so I had my whole pros and cons list, and it was numerical, and I could rank order everything. Ultimately, I decided to go with a pricier program because I really liked their curriculum. That set my timeline back a little bit, and also my bank account, but I'm more confident with it because I really like the curriculum of the program that I chose. The faculty tends to be, they're more well known, they're established, and they don't advertise for things that kind of send up those red flags that we talked about. It's the right choice for me in my coaching practice in the long run, even if it isn't sort of the quick fix that a lot of people were looking for.
And by the way, I just need to tell you, I had an idea, so we'll talk offline of how to pay for that tuition sooner.
Oh, great.
So I'm going to, and that's one of the things I do as an innovator. We're always thinking about ways to support the strategy of our clients. So just to summarize, first step, you're thinking you want to be a coach, hire a coach, go through the coaching program as a client. Check out the International Coach Federation, the I.C.F. It's internationalcoachfederation.org. Look at the core competencies, do some research, understand the industry. While coaching, currently, as we're recording this, is not governed by some discipline or a governing body. It's not regulated to the hilt. The I.C.F. has the longest track record, has a really good track record of setting a standard for what is a good coach. And if somebody graduates in an I.C.F. approved course or program, it's guaranteed that that person did not just put out a shingle, they actually have some skill, or they've jumped through enough hoops to know a little bit more than the average person about how to guide you, which is really important, because what a coach says and does with you can set the tenor for a day, a month, a year, and the rest of your life. So it's a privilege to sit as a coach, but it's also a very sacred space that needs to be honored with experience, expertise, and some training. So, okay, so things to look for.
Well, as you mentioned, top of the list was whether or not they were I.C.F. certified. It's not a deal breaker. There are coaching programs that aren't I.C.F. certified, but it's a huge notch in their favor because of the credibility that you just discussed. They're the training requirements, and then there are also some quality controls. Like when you apply to be accredited with the I.C.F., you have to submit recordings of some of your coaching sessions, of course, with the permission of your clients. But so I.C.F. certification was at the top of the list. I was really drawn to programs that were affiliated with a university, largely because of the credibility that comes along with the university. I liked seeing a well-developed curriculum, and I liked seeing that well-developed curriculum advertised on their website so that you could know exactly what you were getting into, rather than sort of kind of the nebulous topics of, we'll talk about presence, or we'll talk about authenticity, and not really going into any more detail. I liked a little bit of granularity because it made me trust that they had a plan for it, and they weren't just going to sit me down in some seminar that was going to, be a 1 hour web conference on, let's talk about authenticity, without any real guidance or any real credibility or knowledge behind it. I was drawn to in-person options. I tend to not do that well with online only programs, because I'm a procrastinator, and so I like the in-person presence. And so I was really drawn to those programs. And I found that if they had in-person options as well as, or to supplement the online only stuff, those tended for me to have a little bit of credibility. That's just my personal style. That's not to say that online only programs aren't high quality or don't offer those, the same subject matters, but it's a personal preference for me. I liked the in-person option. I liked seeing programs that advertise more than one faculty member, because I think if you're a solo shop, it's pretty easy to just do whatever you want and go off the rails. So I liked seeing multiple faculty members advertised on those program websites. And then also just the presence of the website, like if it's a sharp, professional looking website, an active social media platform with real human beings advertised on their websites and not just kind of generic stock photos, all those things were kind of a plus. So that's not to say that any one of those is a deal breaker, but for me, that's what I looked for when I was eliminating and doing my pros and cons lists.
Right. So those are all really good objectives that you wanted to check off. And for me, I had a different set. My criterion were things like, could I do it while I had a full-time job and raise my kids? So I wanted the total online. Like you, I was searching for a learning setting where I could maybe meet up with other students online. I wanted to find like minds. Also, I wanted a variety in the faculty. There is, I didn't really care if they were affiliated or not with a local university or a university at all, but that was important to you. And today there are more programs affiliated with universities than when I went through. And here's a little bit of research. There's been research done that says when you start with a group, like a cohort, instead of just, you can start anytime you want to and jump into a pool that's already has lots of swimmers trying to get to their objectives, there is a greater chance of going deeper, having more success, meeting your milestones. I really had to be driven and disciplined to get myself through because nobody else was holding my hand. So there is something to starting with a group and being able to go through with a group and end with a group. And I think your program that you eventually picked had that dynamic.
Yeah, 100%. I think if you do go with a self-paced sort of online only program, you do have to be quite disciplined, and as you are, and hold yourself quite accountable. For me, I need the group dynamic to sort of to keep me. I thrive better in that environment. I don't even know that it's necessarily. I was about to say that it's because I procrastinate, but honestly, it's not even that. It's that I just do better in a group environment. Some people do much better on their own. Some people need that flexibility. It's personal preference at the end of the day, what makes sense for you in your situation.
Right. And I want to put out there are a couple of individuals that are well known at this recording again that have coach training. Tony Robbins, Anthony Robbins group, and then also Brene Brown has some coach training. Here's what I see. One of the reasons why I advise people to look at the International Coach Federation, and you in particular, because you have a goal toward executive coaching. You have a goal toward being in corporations and coaching individuals that are moving up their leadership ladder. If you go to a Tony Robbins or even sometimes the Brene Brown, where this is a well-known person, you get their coach training, that limits who your audience could be if it's not ICF accredited and if it's not affiliated with someone that a corporation might respect. So that is something to think about. And Martha Beck has a coach training school for life coaches. She came up through Oprah Winfrey's network when Oprah had started her magazine. The life coach on staff was Martha Beck. So Martha has a lot of clout in the life coaching arena. If you want to be a life coach, that will put a ceiling on where you can go to some degree. I'm not saying that Martha Beck trained people can't work in corporations. If you have an idea of where you want to go, take that into consideration as to who you pick for your school. And also realize, as a coach, get in and get some training and then get into the marketplace, because where I started as a restorative coach, helping people come out of therapy into working on their own without a therapist, but still needing support from a coach who was not a therapist, applying life skills, holding themselves consistent to certain habits, those sorts of things, I realized that I didn't want to stay in the restorative realm, and I still don't like to play in that realm. So I eventually became project management coach. Then I became an executive coach. And where I play the best right now is in certain corporations around communication and conversational intelligence and building leaders and working with entrepreneurs and then also reinventors. What those three have in common is people are innovating where they are to where they want to be. And so you will need to get in and start somewhere, but where you end up may not be the place that you intended. Something new may come up that you like better. Okay, Sarah, let's go to things that were red flags.
Oh boy, there were lots of these. I think the biggest red flag for me is things that advertise cheap tuition. And that one is unfortunate because everybody wants to get this for cheap. Nobody's got, 5 figures lying around to throw at a coaching program. So to look at it for less than $1,000, it sounds so attractive, but the reality is that it's going to diminish the quality of what you're getting. And it's more likely to be a scheme, I think. You get what you pay for, we talked about this earlier, but advertising based on the salary of coach, you can make over 6 figures, or you can make, I made over 200 grand in 1 year, those kinds of things were just huge red flags for me, both in the quality of the program and the motivation of the person that was advertising that certification. I tended to shy away from programs that were kind of based on like a cult of personality. I think that's more of a turnoff for me personally than an outright red flag. But I think if it's very personality driven, you're more likely to have to subscribe to someone's one mentality and one set way of doing things, rather than, as you talked about, having a program that gives you a little bit more flexibility to explore different aspects of coaching. This might sound a little bit obvious, but typos on the website. If they had like lots of grammatical errors and lots of typos on their website, if things didn't flow nicely, if it wasn't professionally designed, that was a huge red flag. There were a few websites that I saw that promised like quick I.C.F certification, but then sometimes you can't always find them on the I.C.F website. Huge red flag, obviously. A lack of contact information on their website. If you couldn't find a phone number or email address easily, there were a few places that I didn't find any at all, and that's a very quick. All right, if you're asking for my money, but you're not going to give me anything in return, if you're not going to give me any sort of contact information, even, that's a very quick disqualifier. We talked about this earlier, but no human beings on their website. So if it's just generic stock photos and no actual pictures of the coach or group classes or things that they're working with, that tended to be a little off-putting for me. Generic or really like illustrious sounding names for things there's an example I'll show you in a bit, and I know nothing about this program, so this is not a dig necessarily on this program, but there's an example I'll show you from the Transformation Academy. That might sound great. Transformation is a wonderful idea, but it's just called Transformation Academy. It's not, it makes me, I admit I am a hostile consumer, but it makes me quite suspicious.
Okay.
There were a lot of programs where you could sort of start at the base and then pay to add more services on top of that base level service. And all of those services were sort of like tiered, like you can get this one package at like 50% off, and if you add this other package, it's 75% off. But the reality is they're just advertising something at one price and saying it's 50% off and it's 75% off, when in reality that's the base price. And it just, you know, the whole model was it was just sketchy. And then there are a lot of coaches who sort of sell their own coach training services, as you talked about. I tended to, that wasn't necessarily a red flag, but something that I stayed away from, because I like a group, we've talked about this, but I like a group coachment, a group faculty approach to it, where you're getting input from more than one person. It's less cult of personality and more, feels a little more empirical, I guess.
Right, right. Well, those are really good pieces, and the note I wrote down was remembering being in an I.C.F conference up in Quebec, Canada, around 2004, 2005, being in a large audience and having one of the best paid kind of rock stars of the time in our industry on stage, and she literally asked us, stand up if you're working more than this many hours legitimately with paid clients. Stay standing if you're doing this or that. By the time she finished, she had a room of 1,000 of us.
Mm-hmm.
There were less than 12 of us standing, working full time, and had earned over $100,000 consistently.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you that, you know, I started out maybe $10,000 the first year, maybe 15 the next, maybe up to 20, and to 30. There's time and experience. You have to market yourself. If you're an independent coach, a lot of people are getting training now because they are a coach inside of an organization with a dream of someday having their own practice. Anytime you move into your own practice, 20% of your time will need to be dedicated to marketing. And that doesn't mean social media. That means really understanding what marketing is. And I have other recordings, if you want to listen to me talking to John Naster about.
By the way, highly recommend that.
You will understand more what we're talking about, but you have to be able to run a business, market it, and be the coach. And another great book to read and study before you get into that position is The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, to understand what I'm talking about. So back to figuring out, how do I become a coach? How do I pick a program? What's the next thing you want to tell us?
I just want to show you, if I may, just a couple screenshots from some of the online searches that I did, just to show you.
This is life coach training in Utah, which again mentioned, I don't know this school from any other school. Be cautious of schools that are not ICF accredited, because there are a lot of scams out there. And I'm not saying that this one is, but tell us why you picked this one, Sarah.
So I'm showing you this example because you'll notice up at the top here where it says Transformation Academy, the title makes me a little leery off the get-go. You see down here at the bottom, save 47%. So you're getting all of this for under $1,000. You can see off here to the right all these different options that they offer, which that in itself is not a bad thing. But you'll see right here it says life coach training in Utah. But I'm going to show you the next screenshot that I took. Oh look, life coach training in Texas. Everything's the same, except it's just different one state to another. So I found this by just doing some Google searches. And when I changed the state name, I mean, it's great for SEO optimization. These guys have certainly done their job. But anytime you search for a state, any state will pop up in that one particular window. So for me, that tells me that like they're spending a lot of time developing their online presence, and maybe that's good. I know nothing about the Transformation Academy whatsoever, but it was a red flag for me because they're not focusing on building their curriculum and building the substance of what they're doing. They're focusing on SEO optimization and getting their word out. That's not that that's bad, but it's not what's going to work for me. You also see right here, all of the different certifications, they self-certify. So it doesn't appear to be ICF certified. They don't advertise that. You've got these nice badges that you can get and add to your bio. All of these things for me were some red flags. And then again, also like when you're seeing it for cheap, to me, we all want it cheap, right? Nobody wants to spend a ton of money on this, but it was a red flag for me.
Okay, so did you go to life coach certification courses and see what their courses were? And I guess I have two questions. What are their courses? They're obviously not ICF accredited. And when you say self-certified, so there's nobody giving them a test and there's no one giving them practical.
Correct.
Like for me,
yeah. If you look down in like if you look in the badge right here that they've got here, you're certified as a master life coach from Transformation Services Incorporated. You're not certified from the ICF. You're certified. They're self-certified. I guess I should say they self-certify.
Okay.
They certify the graduates of their program.
Okay. What we have is, and this is a concern with any education program in my mind. When I graduated from Coach U, they didn't give me a certificate. They trained me so then I could go and apply to the ICF to get certified by a different body, a governing sort of body that would then put me through the ringer to see if I really knew what I needed. It would be like a real estate school teaching somebody and then stamping approval and say, we taught them, instead of the real estate agent having to go to a statewide testing center and take a regulated assessment to see what they know, or an accountant graduating from a college and then having to go pass their accounting test to be certified, or an attorney, even more strident, who goes through and graduates, but then they have to pass the bar exams, and that's 4 days of exams or something like that. So what we're saying, I think you're saying, and I agree with you, is that we need to really look at what kind of rigor do they put their students through to prove that these people have actually embodied the skills that the clients are going to need when that person services those clients' needs.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Okay. So what have we not covered, Sarah, that you feel like would be really helpful for people who are asking, I think I want to become a coach. What do I do?
So my thinking is, if you do really need an online program, if you need that for flexibility, if you need that because it might be a little bit cheaper, I would say ask around. We started this by talking about, if you do want to become a coach, engage the services of a coach. And I would start there with recommendations. I find your recommendations invaluable. And because they come from you, I trust them a lot more. There's so much out there. There's such a high volume of fraud within the coaching industry that it's hard to know when you're just doing Google searches what is or isn't credible or valuable in your training. So I would say, if you do need an online only program, ask around with other coaches in the industry to see what they would recommend and where they would start. And then if you do decide to do that, one thing that I would highly recommend you do is call and talk to someone before you pay anything. That's not always a guarantee that you're not going to be sending your money to a fraudulent organization, because there are plenty of recorded phone calls that come out in lawsuits of people being taken for the max limit on their credit card. But if you can talk to someone who's actually a coach and who's gone through that program, see if they can put you in contact with other coaches who graduated from their program, who might be able to tell you a little bit about the online program. Someone who, ideally, I would love to see, like, if you need an online only program, reach out to them and say, hey, can you put me in contact with some of your alumni? I'd like to talk to them and just get their experience on the program. And if their intent is genuine, they're going to refer you to some of their favorite alumni and say, yeah, we've got this person who's working as a coach. We can put you in contact with this person who specializes in this topic. And then you can talk to those students from that program just to see what their thinking was, what they would have done differently, and if they would recommend it.
Yep, that's great advice. I'll just add, get that coach, see what it's like to be experiencing coaching. In your case, we're asking it to pay you, your experience with me to pay you as you're learning. So you've set up your own company. You're doing some coaching that you're getting paid for. You're doing some consulting that you can get paid for. So you're branching out, you're standing in that arena and seeing what it's like. And so far we've got thumbs up. This is working.
Yep.
Going, experiment your way into it. It's one of those places that if you put a target somewhere and say, I'm going to be a coach and that's what I need to be, and you have no experience playing in the field, being coached, you may find yourself with a big debt, having paid for something that you either completed or didn't, that you will never get a return off of beyond just the experience that poured into you as a human being that you took with you.
Yeah.
This is a big price tag to not get more than that. So Sarah, people want to get in contact with you. How do they do that?
So you can find me on Instagram at the Boman Group, B-O-M-A-N. There's no W in Boman. Or you can find me on my website. It's saraboman.com. That's for the coaching side of things. If you're interested in management consulting, it's bomangroupconsulting.com. Again, Boman with no W.
B-O-M-A-N.
B-O-M-A-N.
Yes, I'm Lyn from Soul Salt. I hope this has been really helpful in helping those of you who are trying to figure out, I think I want to be a coach. What are my next steps? Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Lyn.